I've always been the one to step in when things got tough. My name's Ethan and I'm a plumber, but to my family, I'm more like a fixer, a problem solver, the one who makes things right. It's not that I mind helping. I've always believed in looking out for my own, but sometimes you can give too much without realizing it. And that's where my story begins. My cousin Mark was getting married. He's the kind of guy who always has a smile, a quip, and a way of getting out of scrapes with charm. He's the golden child, the one everyone expects to do great things. And me? Well, I'm the one who cleans up after the great things. The wedding was set to be this grand affair, something out of a fairy tale. Mark and his fiancée, Sarah, had dreams of a perfect day, but as the date approached, the reality of expenses started to set in. Mark, being Mark, came to me with that familiar grin. Ethan, you know how it is, right? Family helps family. Can you cover the photographer? We found this amazing one, but he's a bit out of our budget. I didn't hesitate. It was what I did. I paid for Mark's college tuition when our parents couldn't swing it, helped him move into his first apartment, even covered his utilities when he was between jobs. The photographer was just another check on the list of things I did for family. I agreed, thinking it was no big deal, just another way to show I cared. But as the wedding day approached, something felt off. Maybe it was the way Mark and Sarah seemed to take my help for granted at this tidden, or maybe it was the underlying tension at the rehearsal dinner. I was there in my work clothes, having just finished a job because I couldn't afford to take the day off. I was helping set up, making sure everything was in place, when Mark made his toast. "Thanks for the money, but no one wants a plumber in the wedding photos," he said with that grin. The room erupted in awkward laughter. I stood there in my work boots, the scent of pipe dope still lingering on my hands, and I laughed too, a laugh that was more of a reflex than anything else. But inside, something snapped. I knew then that this wasn't about helping family. It was about being used, about being the punchline to someone else's joke. And as I walked away from the wedding, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be the silent, invisible hero anymore. I was going to cancel the photographer, and I was going to book myself a one-way ticket to Hawaii, because if no one wanted a plumber in the wedding photos, they sure as hell wouldn't want one at the reception without any photos at all. That's how my journey of self-discovery began, not with a bang, but with a quiet, determined step away from the life I had been living for everyone else. I didn't go to college. While Mark was changing majors like they were fashion accessories, I was out in the world learning the trade of plumbing. My parents needed help with the mortgage, and Mark's tuition wasn't going to pay itself. So I became the family plumber, fixing leaks, unclogging drains, and apparently solving all their financial problems. Mark's charm worked wonders, but it was my wallet that often did the heavy lifting. When he and Sarah moved in together, I helped with the deposit. When his car needed repairs, I covered the cost. And when they decided to tie the knot, Mark came to me with that same grin, asking for help with the wedding. "You're the only one I trust with the wedding, Ethan. Can you help us pull it off?" he asked, knowing full well I'd say yes. I always did. So I did what I always did. I picked up extra shifts, worked weekends, and even gave up my one vacation in years. Every extra dollar I had went into making their day perfect. I paid for the photographer, a guy named Tom, who had a portfolio that looked like it belonged in a museum. I helped Sarah's mom with the venue deposit when she forgot her checkbook. I even covered the unexpected cost of Sarah's second dress because the first one didn't fit her vision. I paid, I smiled, I clapped when they kissed. And what did I get? "Thanks for the money, but no one wants a plumber in the wedding photos." That line, that smirk, that gleam in his eye like he was proud of himself, like it was some sort of mic drop moment. The next morning, I woke up in a cheap motel room, the windows open to the Hawaiian breeze. It should have felt like relief, but instead my stomach was a clenched fist of rage. My phone was buzzing with missed calls. The text had started around 6 p.m. "Boah, Sarah. Ethan, where are you?" Mark. "Dude, did you cancel the photographer?" Mom. "Please tell me this is a misunderstanding." Sarah. "Do you know how humiliated we were? People left early." Dad. "Ethan, call me now." The cherry on top was Mark's message. "Bro, you went too far. Like I said, no one wants a plumber in the wedding photos. But this is pathetic." I stared at that message for a long time. No apology, No, I didn't mean it. Just more mockery. That night, my phone rang again. It was Mom. I let it go to voicemail, but then she called again and again. Eventually, I picked up. Ethan, she said, what is going on with you? Hi, Mom. Good to hear from you too, I replied, my voice flat. Sarah's family is furious. They spent all that money and everyone went home without any photos. Sarah's family, I laughed bitterly. You mean the people who spent nothing and left the photographer bill to me? That's not the point, she snapped. No, I said, the point is your son, your other son, humiliated me in front of everyone, and you all laughed. Oh, come on, she retorted. It was a joke. I went quiet. You really think it's funny? You think it's funny I skipped vacations, turned down raises, just to stay in town and help you with the mortgage, paid for Mark's wedding, and then got told I'm not photo-worthy? There was silence on the line then. Well, you do wear that uniform everywhere, Ethan. Maybe if you tried harder. That was it. That was the moment. The click. I hung up. A few hours later, Dad called. What were you thinking? He snapped. We had people calling us. There was no photographer. Sarah was crying in the bathroom. I was quiet. You listening, son? Dad, I said calmly, can I ask you something? What? When Mark dropped out of school, who paid his last tuition bill? You did, he said annoyed. But that's not it. When his car broke down and he needed a new transmission, who helped him buy a used one? You did. When you and Mom were behind on the house 3 winters ago, and the heating was about to be shut off, there was a pause, then he grunted. What's your point? My point, I said slowly, is that I have always shown up, and not once, not one single time, has any of you thanked me without adding a guilt trip after. And now you all act like I owe you my silence, my humiliation. You're being dramatic. No, Dad, I said, I'm being done. The day of the wedding dawned with a perfect blue sky, the kind that promised a flawless event. I was up early, the scent of coffee mingling with the lingering smell of pipe dope from my last job. I hadn't taken the day off. I couldn't afford to. Instead, I'd rushed through my work, arriving at the venue in my work clothes, my boots caked with mud from a leaky pipe I just fixed. The setup was in full swing. The venue was a beautiful barn, rustic yet elegant, with fairy lights strung from the rafters. I helped move tables, set up chairs, and even hung the chandelier that Sarah insisted on having. My hands were calloused from years of work, not delicate like those of the guests who would soon arrive, but they were capable, and they got the job done. Mark was in his element, charming everyone, shaking hands and laughing that infectious laugh of his. He was the life of the party even before the party had begun. Sarah, in her second dress, looked like a vision from a magazine, her smile radiant, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of the day. I watched as the guests started to arrive, all dressed in their finest. I was in the background, a shadow in work clothes, blending in with the staff. But I was there, part of the family, the one who had made this day possible in more ways than one. The ceremony was beautiful, with vows exchanged under an arch of flowers. I stood at the back, my heart swelling with pride for Mark, despite the sting of his earlier words. The reception was a blur of laughter, dancing, and champagne. I mingled, but I was always on the periphery, the family's unsung hero, the one who didn't quite fit in. Then came the speeches. Mark, ever the showman, took the stage. His toast was heartfelt, thanking everyone who had made this day possible. And then, with that grin, he said it again. Thanks for the money, but no one wants a plumber in the wedding photos. The room erupted in laughter, some uncomfortable, some genuine. I laughed too, but it was hollow, like the echo of a joke that had lost its humor. I watched as the photographer Tom captured the moment, the laughter, the smiles, and I realized something. I was invisible in these photos, not because I didn't exist, but because I was never meant to be seen. Not really. I was the one who paid for the photos, but I wasn't the one they wanted in them. So I did what I should have done years ago. I walked away. I found Tom, told him I was canceling his services, and handed him a check for his time. He looked confused, but I didn't stick around to explain. I left the barn, the music fading behind me, and I drove straight to the airport. As I boarded the plane to Hawaii, I felt a strange mix of guilt and liberation. Guilt for leaving the wedding without a photographer, for the chaos I knew would ensue. But liberation, oh, the sweet taste of it, for finally choosing myself over the expectations of others. I landed in Honolulu, the sun setting over the ocean, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I checked into a small hotel, the kind with a view of the beach, and I sat on the balcony, watching the waves. My phone buzzed incessantly, but I ignored it. I was done being the family's punching bag, the one who gave and gave until there was nothing left. The wedding day had come and gone, and I wasn't in the photos, but I was in Hawaii, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The sun had set, painting the sky in a canvas of deep blues and purples as I sat on my hotel balcony, the warm Hawaiian breeze carrying the scent of salt and freedom. My phone, now on silent, was a constant reminder of the life I'd left behind. Each buzz felt like a tether trying to pull me back, but I was determined to cut those ties, to find my own path. I spent my first day in Hawaii exploring the beaches, the sun warming my skin, the ocean washing away the grime of years spent in the shadows of my family's expectations. I swam, I walked, and I watched the world go by without the weight of someone else's dreams on my shoulders. The next morning, I turned on my phone, bracing myself for the onslaught of messages and voicemails. There were dozens from family and friends, each one more urgent than the last. Sarah, Ethan, please call me. What happened? Mark, you've gone too far. This isn't funny. Mom, your father is beside himself. Please, explain yourself. Dad, I expect a call from you immediately. I took a deep breath, the sound of the ocean calming me, and called my dad. His voice was stern, his disappointment palpable, even through the phone. Ethan, he began, what the hell were you thinking? I was thinking about myself for once, I replied, my voice steady. You've embarrassed us. Sarah's family is livid. They're demanding an explanation. I paid for the photographer, I said, and then I canceled him. It was my money, my choice. Your choice, he scoffed. You've ruined Mark's wedding. I felt a surge of anger. I've been ruining my life for Mark's choices for years. When was the last time any of you thanked me without a but or an expectation? There was a pause, then he sighed. This isn't about gratitude, Ethan. It's about family. Family? I laughed bitterly. Family is supposed to support each other, not use one another. I've been used, Dad, and it stops now. He was quiet for a moment. Your mother is upset. She thinks you've lost your mind. Maybe I have, I said, but at least I found myself. I hung up, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. I knew I'd have to face them eventually, but for now I needed this space, this time to heal, to rediscover who Ethan was outside of his family's shadow. Days turned into weeks. I explored the island, made friends with locals, learned to surf, and even took a part-time job at a local bar. The work was different, but it felt good to be appreciated for what I did, not just for what I could provide. One evening while I was serving drinks, a familiar face appeared at the bar. It was Mark, looking out of place in his designer suit among the casual beach attire of the patrons. He sat down, his eyes meeting mine, a mix of anger and confusion in them. Ethan, he said, his voice low. Mark, I replied, setting a beer in front of him. What brings you to Hawaii? He took a long sip, his gaze fixed on the bottle. I came to find you, to talk. I nodded, waiting for him to continue. You've caused a lot of trouble, he began, but then he paused. But I've been thinking, maybe I owe you an apology. I raised an eyebrow, surprised by his admission. I've always taken you for granted, he continued. I never thought about what you sacrificed for me, for all of us. I'm sorry for what I said at the wedding. I sat down across from him, the bar between us like a barrier. I appreciate that, Mark, but words aren't enough. I need actions. I need to know I'm not just the family's bank account. He nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. I get it, and I'm here to make things right, not just for the wedding, but for everything. We talked long into the night, Mark opening up about his own insecurities, his fears of not living up to expectations. It was the first real conversation we'd had in years. And as we talked, I realized that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for us to rebuild our relationship, not as fixer and fixed, but as equals, as brothers. The aftermath of the wedding had been chaos, but it had also been a catalyst for change. I'd found myself in Hawaii, and in doing so, I'd opened the door for my family to find me too. Not as the plumber, not as the bank, but as Ethan, the son, the brother, the man who deserved to be seen, to be appreciated, to be loved for who he was, not what he could provide. The days that followed Mark's visit to Hawaii were a mix of introspection and action. He stayed for a week, and during that time, we explored the island together, surfed, and talked. It was like rediscovering my brother, not as the person I'd always supported, but as someone who could support me too. One evening as we sat on the beach watching the sunset, Mark turned to me. "Ethan, I've been thinking, what if you didn't come back? What if you stayed here?" I looked at him, surprised by his suggestion. "And do what? Keep bartending? Why not?" He shrugged. "You seem happy here. And if you want, I could help set up a plumbing business. You've got the skills, and I've got the business sense." It was an offer I hadn't expected, one that showed he was truly trying to make amends. "I appreciate that, Mark. But what about the family?" "They'll adjust," he said. "You've done more than your share, Ethan. It's time you lived for yourself." The idea was tempting, the freedom intoxicating. But there were still loose ends, responsibilities I couldn't just walk away from. "I'll think about it," I replied, the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. The next morning, I called my parents. It was time to face the music, to explain my actions, and to set boundaries. My mother answered, her voice still tinged with hurt. "Ethan, your father and I have been worried sick." "I'm sorry, Mom," I began, "but I needed this. I needed to find myself outside of the family's expectations." There was a long silence. "We've been selfish," she admitted. "We've taken you for granted." I took a deep breath. "I'm not coming back. Not right away. I need to figure out what I want, what makes me happy. But I want to keep in touch. I want to rebuild our relationship, but on new terms." She sighed, a sound of acceptance. "We'll work on it, Ethan. We love you." "I love you too, Mom, and tell Dad I'll call him soon." The conversation was a start, a small step towards healing. After hanging up, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a part of my old life that no longer fit. Mark left Hawaii with promises to keep in touch, to support my decisions. And I stayed, embracing the life I'd stumbled upon. I continued working at the bar, but I also started looking into setting up a small plumbing business. It was a way to blend my skills with the freedom I'd found here. Months passed, and I found myself falling in love with the island, its people, and the life I was building. I made friends, learned the local customs, and even started to feel like I belonged. One day as I was fixing a leaky pipe in a local's home, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Ethan," she said, her voice hesitant, "I owe you an apology. The wedding, it was a mess without you." I smiled, sitting back on my heels. "I'm sorry too, Sarah. I shouldn't have left like that." "No," she interrupted. "You had every right. We treated you poorly. I treated you poorly." Her words were a balm to old wounds. "Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that." "We're having a vow renewal," she continued. "A small one, just family and close friends. We'd like you to be there if you're willing." It was an olive branch, a chance to start anew. "I'll be there," I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. The vow renewal was held on the beach, the same beach where Mark and I had reconnected. It was simple, heartfelt, and this time I was in the photos, not as the one who paid for them, but as a cherished family member. Mark and Sarah thanked me, not with words that belittled, but with genuine gratitude. As I stood there watching them renew their vows, I realized that the resolution wasn't just about fixing my relationship with my family. It was about fixing my relationship with myself. I'd found a balance, a way to give without losing myself, to be appreciated without being taken for granted. The resolution was not a grand finale, but a beginning where I was seen, valued, and where I could finally say, "I'm here and I'm enough." The sun was setting over the ocean, casting a golden glow on the beach where Sarah and Mark had just renewed their vows. The small gathering of family and friends was dispersing, but I lingered, my feet sinking into the warm sand. The sound of the waves was soothing, a reminder of the peace I'd found here in Hawaii. I'd decided to stay, to build a life that was truly mine. My plumbing business was taking shape, and I'd found a community that valued my skills and my presence. The bar where I worked part-time had become a second home, a place where I was known not for my money or my family, but for who I was. As the last of the guests left, Mark approached me, a smile on his face. "Thanks for being here, Ethan. It means the world." I nodded, feeling the weight of the past lift a little more. I wouldn't have missed it, and thanks for understanding why I needed to stay. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You've always been the one holding us together. Now it's time for you to hold yourself together." His words resonated with me. I'd spent so long fixing others' problems that I'd neglected my own. But here, in this new chapter, I was fixing myself piece by piece. The next morning, I woke up early, the habit of a lifetime, and went for a run along the beach. The sand was cool under my feet, the ocean a constant companion. As I ran, I thought about the future, about the life I was building. It wasn't just about the business or the bar. It was about the relationships I was forming, the person I was becoming. I stopped at a small cafe, a regular spot, and ordered my usual coffee. The owner, Leilani, greeted me with a warm smile. "Morning, Ethan. How was the vow renewal?" "It was beautiful," I replied, taking a sip. "Simple, but perfect." She nodded, her eyes kind. "You've brought a lot of joy to this island and, people talk about how you've helped them, not just with plumbing, but with your kindness." Her words were unexpected, and they struck a chord. I'd been so focused on escaping my past that I hadn't realized the impact I was making here. "Thank you, Leilani. That means a lot." Later that day, I met with a local contractor discussing potential partnerships for my plumbing business. We talked about sustainability, about using local materials, about making a difference in the community. It was invigorating, a stark contrast to the corporate world I'd left behind. That evening, I sat on my balcony, the ocean a dark expanse before me, stars beginning to dot the sky. My phone buzzed and I glanced at it, expecting more messages from family or friends. Instead, it was an email from an old friend, Jake, from back home. "Ethan," it read, "heard you're making waves in Hawaii. I've got a project lined up here, and I need someone with your skills. Thought you might be interested in a collaboration. Let me know." I smiled, considering the offer. It was a chance to bridge my old life with the new, to show that I could succeed on my terms. I replied, agreeing to discuss it further, feeling a sense of empowerment. The weeks turned into months, and my business grew. I was busy, but it was a fulfilling kind of busy. I was part of the community now, not just a visitor. I attended local events, helped with community projects, and even started teaching a class on basic plumbing at a local school. One day, while I was fixing a sink at the school, a student asked, "Mr. Ethan, why did you come to Hawaii?" I paused, considering my answer. "I came to find myself," I said, "and to learn that it's okay to start over, to build something new." The student nodded, absorbing the lesson, not just about plumbing, but about life. As the sun set once more, I stood on the beach, the sand between my toes, the ocean whispering its secrets. I thought about the journey, about the family I'd left, and the family I was building here. I thought about Mark, Sarah, my parents, and how our relationships had changed, evolved, and grown. This new chapter wasn't just about starting over. It was about continuing, about carrying forward the lessons learned, the love shared, and the person I'd become. It was about embracing the unknown, about finding joy in the journey, and about knowing that wherever I went, I carried with me the strength to build, to fix, and to love. The new chapter was open, and I was ready to write it, one day at a time, with the ocean as my witness and the island as my home. Years had passed since I'd made the decision to stay in Hawaii, and the life I'd built here was thriving. My plumbing business was now well established, known for its quality work and community involvement. The bar where I'd once tended had become a local favorite, and I was still part of it, though now more as a silent partner, enjoying the occasional shift behind the counter. The community had embraced me, and I, in turn, had embraced them. I'd become a fixture in local events, from teaching plumbing classes to volunteering at community projects. But as I look back on my journey, I realized that it wasn't just about what I built here. It was about what I was leaving behind, the legacy I was creating. One evening, as I sat on my balcony, the ocean a canvas of twilight hues, I received a call from Mark. His voice was excited. "Ethan, you won't believe this. I've been approached by a developer who wants to build eco-friendly housing. They need someone with your expertise." I smiled, feeling a mix of pride and nostalgia. That sounds like a big project. It is, Mark replied, and I want you on board. It's a chance to make a real difference, not just here, but in the world. I thought about it, about blending my old life with the new, about taking what I'd learned in Hawaii and applying it on a larger scale. Let's do it, I said, the decision feeling right. The project was ambitious, aiming to create sustainable living spaces using local materials and innovative plumbing systems. It was a chance to leave a mark, not just on the landscape, but on the future. As we worked on the project, I found myself reflecting on my parents. They'd visited Hawaii several times, and each visit had been a step towards healing our relationship. My father, once so stern, had softened, seeing the man I'd become. My mother, always the heart of the family, had embraced the island, finding joy in its beauty. One day while we were on site, Mark handed me a small, wrapped package. "This is from Mom and Dad," he said, his eyes twinkling. I unwrapped it, revealing a beautifully carved wooden plaque. It read, "Ethan's Legacy, Building a Better World, One Pipe at a Time." Tears welled up in my eyes, not just for the sentiment, but for the acknowledgement. "They really get it," I murmured. Mark nodded. "They do, and they're proud of you, Ethan. We all are." The project took months, but as it neared completion, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about the houses, it was about the community, about teaching others, about creating something that would outlast me. On the day of the grand opening, the community gathered, not just to see the new housing, but to celebrate what it represented. I stood with Mark, Sarah, my parents, and the new friends I'd made here. Leilani from the cafe, now a close friend, gave a speech about community, about how one person's vision could inspire change. As I looked out at the crowd, I saw faces of all ages, all backgrounds, united by the idea of sustainable living, of making a difference. I realized that my legacy wasn't just in the buildings or the plumbing, it was in the people, in the relationships, in the shared vision of a better future. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I walked alone along the beach, the sand cool under my feet. I thought about the journey, about the old Ethan who'd felt lost, and the new Ethan who'd found his way. The legacy I was leaving wasn't just about what I'd built, but about the path I'd paved for others. It was about showing that change was possible, that starting over could lead to something beautiful, that family wasn't just about blood, but about bonds formed through shared dreams and hard work. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I felt a deep sense of peace. My legacy was here, in the laughter of children playing in the new community center, in the smiles of the elderly enjoying their new homes, in the pride of my family, and in the knowledge that I'd helped build something that would endure. The legacy was not in the past or in the buildings. It was in the future, in the lives touched, and in the world made a little better, one connection at a time. And as I walked, the ocean whispering its timeless song, I knew that this was only the beginning.